Level 1, the student pilot. Level 1 is where you start. You're 18, maybe 22 years old, and you've dreamed of flying since you were a kid. You've spent your childhood watching planes take off, building model aircraft, playing flight simulators. Now you're finally doing it. You're sitting in a tiny Cessna 172 at a local flight school with an instructor beside you who's going to teach you not to kill yourself. Your first lesson is terrifying. The plane feels like a toy made of aluminum and hope. It weighs 2,500 pounds, less than most cars. Every gust of wind makes the wings dip and you think you're going to die. Your instructor tells you to take the controls and you're gripping the yoke so hard your knuckles are white. The plane doesn't feel stable. It feels like it wants to kill you. Your instructor keeps saying, relax, feel the plane, small inputs, but you can't relax because you're 3,000 feet in the air in a machine held up by physics you don't fully understand. You're learning the absolute basics, how to maintain altitude without climbing or descending, how to turn without losing altitude or gaining speed, how to trim the aircraft so it flies itself, how to read instruments, airspeed indicator, altimeter, heading indicator, vertical speed indicator. Your instructor keeps pointing at gauges and asking, what's your altitude? What's your airspeed? And you're so overwhelmed you can barely remember. Then comes the landing. Your instructor demonstrates one, talking through every step. Beam the numbers, power to 1,500 RPM, 1 notch of flaps, establish descent, turn base, 2nd notch of flaps, turn final, full flaps, airspeed 65 knots, aim for the numbers. You watch him grease it, a perfect landing where you barely feel the wheels touch. Then he says, your airplane, and you have to do it. Your first landing is terrible. You come in too fast, too high, bounce twice, and the instructor has to take over to save it. He doesn't yell, he just says, again. You go around the pattern and try again, and again, and again. By your 5th attempt, you land without bouncing, and you feel like you just won the Olympics. You're studying for your private pilot license, your PPL. That requires a minimum of 40 hours of flight time, but most people need 60 to 70 hours before they're ready. You need to pass a written exam with 60 questions on aerodynamics, weather, regulations, navigation, and aircraft systems. You need to pass an oral exam where an FAA examiner grills you on everything for 2 hours. And you need to pass a check ride where you demonstrate every maneuver perfectly or you fail. At level 1, you're paying for everything yourself. Flight training costs $10,000 to $15,000 just for your private pilot license. That's just to fly for fun. Then you need your instrument rating, another $15,000 and 40 hours so you can fly in clouds and bad weather. Then your commercial license, another $30,000 and 250 total hours so you can legally get paid to fly. Then your certified flight instructor rating, another $10,000 so you can teach. You're taking out student loans. You're working 2 jobs, one at a restaurant, one at a retail store. You're living on ramen and instant coffee because every single dollar goes toward flight hours at $150 to $200 per hour. Your friends are buying cars and going on vacations, and you're eating rice and beans so you can afford another hour in a 50-year-old Cessna. You solo for the first time. Your instructor gets out of the plane, looks at you, and says, 3 times around the pattern, don't die. You're alone now. Just you and the plane. No safety net, no instructor to grab the controls if you screw up. You taxi to the runway, do your run-up checks, call the tower, and they clear you for takeoff. You push the throttle forward, the engine roars, you accelerate down the runway, 40 knots, 50 knots, 55 knots, you pull back on the yoke, and the plane lifts off. You're flying, alone. It's the most terrifying and exhilarating moment of your entire life. Your heart is pounding, your hands are shaking, but you're doing it. You fly the pattern, upwind, crosswind, downwind, base, final. You land, not perfectly, but safely. You do it 2 more times. When you taxi back, your instructor is waiting with scissors. He cuts off the back of your shirt. It's tradition, dating back to when instructors would literally sit behind students and tug their shirt to get their attention. You're a pilot now. Barely, but you're in the air. You finish your training, you pass your check ride, you get your private pilot license. You can legally fly a plane now, but you can't get paid for it. You're not a professional. Not yet. For that, you need hundreds more hours and thousands more dollars. Level 2, the flight instructor. Level 2 is when you become a certified flight instructor, a CFI, because that's the only way to build hours without going broke. You just spent another $40,000 getting your commercial pilot lessons, your instrument rating, your multi-engine rating, and your CFI. You have maybe 250 hours total time. Airlines won't even look at your resume until you have 1,500 hours. That's the FAA minimum. So you do what every pilot does. You take a job at a flight school teaching the same terrified students you were 2 years ago. You're making $15 to $25 an hour. And that's not per hour of the day, that's per flight hour. If you're scheduled to work 8 hours but only fly 3 hours because of weather or cancellations, you get paid for 3 hours. You're making maybe $25,000 to $35,000 a year if you're lucky. You're living with 3 roommates in a 2-bedroom apartment near the airport because you can't afford anything else. You're flying the same beat-up Cessna 172s you learned in. The planes are old, built in the 1970s and 80s, the avionics are outdated, the radios crackle, the autopilot doesn't work, the paint is faded, and there are oil stains under the cowling that make you nervous, but your maintenance team says are normal. You're teaching people who have no idea what they're doing. You're doing stall recoveries, where you intentionally stall the plane and recover it. You're doing emergency procedures, simulated engine failures, where you pull the power to idle at 3,000 feet, and your student has to glide to an emergency landing. Except you can't actually let them land in a field, so at 500 feet you take over and go around. You're teaching spins, steep turns, short field landings, soft field takeoffs. At level 2, you're building hours slowly. You fly maybe 60 to 80 hours a month if you're lucky and the weather cooperates. At that rate, it'll take you 18 to 24 months to hit 1,500 hours. You're exhausted.
You're working 6 days a week. You wake up at 5 a.m. to pre-flight planes. You fly until 8 p.m. You go home, eat something, study for your next rating or endorsement, and collapse. You're also learning things they didn't teach you in training. How to handle a student who panics at 5,000 feet and freezes on the controls. How to talk someone through a landing when they're completely overwhelmed. How to stay calm when your student makes a mistake that puts you both in danger. How to take control smoothly without making them feel like a failure. You experience your first real emergency, not a simulated one, a real one. You're doing touch and goes with a student, and on the 3rd landing, the engine starts running rough, really rough. You take the controls, declare an emergency with the tower, and land immediately. The engine quits on the taxiway. The mechanic finds a cracked cylinder. If you'd been in the air another 5 minutes, the engine would have failed completely. That's when you realize what being a professional pilot means. It's not about perfect landings or smooth takeoffs. It's about managing risk, making decisions with incomplete information, staying calm when everything is going wrong because your student is looking at you to fix it. But you're getting good, really good. You're learning to fly from the right seat, which is harder than it sounds because everything is backwards. You're mastering crosswind landings in 20-knot gusts. You're doing short field takeoffs where you clear a 50-foot obstacle by 10 feet. You're teaching instrument approaches in actual IMC, actual instrument meteorological conditions, in clouds where you can't see anything and you're flying purely on instruments. You pass 1,000 hours, then 1,200, then 1,500. You're finally eligible for the airlines. You update your resume. You apply to regional airlines, SkyWest, Endeavor Air, Republic Airways, Mesa Airlines. You do video interviews. You get invited to in-person interviews. You study interview prep guides that cost $200. You buy a new suit you can't afford. You get the call. You're hired. You're going to flight training. You're moving to Level 3.
Level 3, the Regional Airline First Officer. Level 3 is your first real airline job. You're a first officer, a co-pilot, for a regional carrier flying 50 to 76-seat regional jets. You're wearing an actual airline uniform, white shirt, black pants, epaulets with stripes, wings on your chest. You're walking through airports in uniform, and passengers assume you're a real pilot now. You are, but barely. Your airline sends you to training for 6 weeks. Ground school, systems training, simulator sessions. You're learning the Embraer ER-145, or the Canadair CRJ-700, or the Embraer E-175. These are real jets, turbofan engines, glass cockpits, fly-by-wire systems, autopilot, flight management computers. Nothing like the Cessna 172 you learned in. The first time you sit in the simulator, you're overwhelmed. There are hundreds of switches, buttons, screens, dials. The instructor starts calling out emergencies, engine fire on takeoff, dual hydraulic failure, wind shear on approach, and you're supposed to run checklists, fly the plane, and communicate with ATC simultaneously. You fail your first sim session. Most people do. You study harder. You chair fly in your hotel room, running through procedures over and over. You pass the next one. You get your type rating. You're officially qualified to fly the jet. Now comes Initial Operating Experience, IOE, where you fly actual passenger flights with a check airman evaluating every move you make. You do 25 hours of IOE. You make mistakes. You forget checklists. You mess up radio calls. But you learn. And eventually the check airman signs you off. You're a line pilot now. Except the pay is terrible. You're making $40,000 to $55,000 a year as a regional first officer. Starting pay at some regionals is $50 to $60 per flight hour, which sounds okay until you realize you only get paid when the aircraft door closes and you push back from the gate. Boarding? Not paid. Delays? Not paid. Sitting in the cockpit for an hour waiting for maintenance? Not paid. You're flying 80 to 90 hours a month, which means you're away from home 15 to 20 days. You're on reserve for the first 6 months, which means you sit at home or near the airport waiting for crew scheduling to call and tell you to report for a flight in 2 hours. You can't make plans. You can't travel more than an hour from the airport. Your life is in limbo.
When you finally get a regular line, you're flying 3 to 5 legs a day, short regional hops. You take off from Chicago, fly 45 minutes to Grand Rapids, land, passengers get off, new passengers get on, you're back in the air 30 minutes later heading to Minneapolis, then to Fargo, then back to Minneapolis, then to Chicago. 5 takeoffs and landings in 1 duty period. At level 3, you're the co-pilot. The captain flies one leg, you fly the next. You swap back and forth. You're learning airline procedures, standard operating procedures, crew resource management, threat and error management. You're learning to work with captains who have 20,000 hours and captains who upgraded 6 months ago and barely have more experience than you. You're also learning the reality of airline flying, mechanical delays where you sit on the ground for 3 hours waiting for a part, weather diversions where you land in a city you weren't supposed to go to, passengers yelling at you because a flight 3 connections ago was late and now they're stuck and it's somehow your fault even though you just showed up. You're sleeping in crash pads, apartments near the airport where 8 pilots share 3 bedrooms and sleep in bunk beds when they're not flying. Or you're staying in crew hotels in cities you'll never actually see because you'll land at 11 p.m. and take off at 6 a.m. You eat at airport restaurants and hotel breakfast buffets. You gain weight. You're exhausted. But you're building hours. You're logging turbine time. You're getting jet experience. You're learning how to manage fatigue, how to fly with a cold, how to handle emergencies in a pressurized aircraft at 40,000 feet. You fly through thunderstorms. You land in 30-knot crosswinds. You do emergency descents when the cabin won't pressurize. After 2 years, you have 3,000 hours. After 4 years, you have 4,500 hours. That's when the major airlines start looking at you. Delta, United, American, Southwest. You apply. You get interviews. You study harder than you've ever studied. Company history, CRM scenarios, technical questions, TMAT questions. Tell me about a time. You get the call. A major airline wants to hire you. You give your notice at the regional. You're moving to Level 4.
Level 4, the major airline first officer. Level 4 is when you get hired by a major airline. Delta, United, American, Southwest. This is what you've been working toward for 8 to 10 years. The pay jumps to $90,000 in your first year as a first officer. By year 5, you're making $150,000 to $180,000. By year 10, you're over $200,000. You're finally making real money. You're flying wide-body jets now, Boeing 737s, 757s, 767s, 777s, 787 Dreamliners, Airbus A320s, A330s, A350s. These are massive aircraft. A Boeing 777 weighs 350,000 pounds empty and can carry 500,000 pounds fully loaded. It has 2 engines that produce 110,000 pounds of thrust each. It can fly 16 hours nonstop. You go through training again, 6 to 8 weeks. Ground school, systems training, simulator sessions. The first time you sit in a 777 simulator, you're in awe. The cockpit is enormous. 6 massive screens, fly-by-wire controls, autopilot that can land the plane in 0 visibility. You're learning systems that didn't exist on regional jets. ETOPS procedures for flying over oceans, high-altitude weather avoidance, international procedures. You finish training, you get your type rating, now you bid for a base and aircraft. You're low seniority, so you get what's left over. Maybe you're based in Newark, flying 737s to Florida and back. Maybe you're in Los Angeles, flying 787s to Tokyo and Sydney. It depends on what's available. At level 4, you're finally living like a normal person. You buy a house, a real house, not an apartment with roommates. You have health insurance that actually covers things. You have a 401k with company matching. You have travel benefits. You and your family can fly standby for free or nearly free anywhere your airline goes. Your kids can visit grandparents across the country. You can vacation in Europe for the price of airport fees. You're flying longer routes now. Instead of 5 45-minute hops, you're doing one 14-hour flight to Hong Kong.
You depart Los Angeles at 11 p.m., fly across the Pacific, land in Hong Kong at 6 a.m. local time 2 days later, but it's only been 14 hours for you. Your body has no idea what time it is. You sleep in a hotel for 24 hours, then fly back. You're dealing with jet lag that makes you feel like you have the flu. You're flying through weather that would ground regional jets. You're punching through thunderstorms at 40,000 feet. You're flying over the North Atlantic, where the nearest airport is 1,000 miles away, and if something goes wrong, you're ditching in the ocean. You're managing fuel, navigating around restricted airspace, coordinating with oceanic controllers who you can't even talk to on the radio. You communicate via data link messages. You're handling emergencies at altitude with 300 passengers behind you. Engine failures, hydraulic failures, pressurization problems, medical emergencies where someone is having a heart attack and you need to decide whether to divert to an airport 400 miles away or continue to your destination. You're making decisions that affect hundreds of lives, but you're still the first officer. You're still the co-pilot. The captain makes the final decisions. You fly the plane, you handle the radios, you run the checklists, you monitor systems, but when something goes seriously wrong, the captain is in command. The captain decides whether to divert. The captain decides whether to declare an emergency. The captain signs the logbook and takes responsibility. You're also stuck. Seniority is everything in the airlines. Everything. Your pay, your schedule, your base, your aircraft, your vacation, when you upgrade to captain, all determined by your seniority number. If you were hired in February 2018, you're behind everyone hired in January 2018 and ahead of everyone hired in March 2018. Forever. You might be a first officer for 8 years, maybe 12 years, maybe 15 years, depending on how fast your airline is growing and how many captains are retiring. You're watching people who got hired 6 months before you upgrade to captain and start making $300,000 while you're still in the right seat making $180,000. But the airline is growing. Retirements are happening. Your seniority is moving up. You're getting closer. You check the company website obsessively, watching your seniority number, calculating when you'll be eligible. Finally, it happens. You get the email. You're invited to captain upgrade training. You accept immediately. You're moving to Level 5.
Level 5, the captain. Level 5 is when you become a captain. You're in the left seat now. You're the pilot in command. You're in charge. You've been flying for 15, maybe 20 years. You have 10,000 to 15,000 hours total time. You float in typhoons, landed in blizzards, dealt with engine failures, medical emergencies, unruly passengers, and every possible emergency the simulator can throw at you. You've earned this. You go through captain training, upgrade training. It's like your initial airline training, but harder. You're learning to be in command. You're learning decision-making, crew resource management from the captain's seat, how to manage a first officer who might be brand new or might have more experience than you. You do simulator sessions where everything goes wrong and you have to lead your crew through it. You passed your check ride. You're a captain now. You get 4 stripes on your epaulets instead of 3. You sit in the left seat. Your paycheck jumps to $250,000 to $300,000 a year. Senior wide-body captains at major airlines make $350,000 to $400,000 a year. If you fly the Boeing 777 or 787 or Airbus A350 and you're senior, you can make over $400,000 a year flying airplanes. But Level 5 isn't about the money or the plane, it's about responsibility. You have 300 to 400 passengers behind you who trust you with their lives. You have a crew of 10 to 15 flight attendants who are looking to you to keep them safe. You have a first officer in the right seat who's looking to you to make the right call when things go wrong. And things go wrong. You lose an engine over the Atlantic Ocean, 1,500 miles from the nearest airport. You're flying a Boeing 777 on ETOPS, Extended Range Twin-Engine Operational Standards, which means you're certified to fly over oceans on 2 engines, but now you only have 1. You declare an emergency. You run the engine failure checklist. You calculate fuel. You coordinate with dispatch. You decide whether to continue to your destination or turn around. You make the call. You land safely in Iceland. Your passengers complain about the delay. You just saved their lives. You have a medical emergency at 40,000 feet over the Pacific. A passenger is having a heart attack. You ask if there's a doctor on board. There is. The doctor says the passenger needs a hospital immediately. You're 800 miles from land. You declare an emergency. You start an emergency descent. You divert to the nearest suitable airport, Tokyo Narita. You land with emergency equipment standing by. The passenger is taken off by paramedics. You saved a life. Your airline thanks you. The passengers, whose vacation was delayed by 6 hours, leave angry reviews online.
You're landing at San Francisco International Airport in Category 2 weather. Visibility 1,200 feet, ceiling 100 feet. You can't see the runway until you're 200 feet above it. You're flying an instrument approach coupled to the autopilot. You're monitoring instruments, watching for any deviation. At 200 feet, you see the runway lights. You disconnect the autopilot and land manually. It's routine for you now. Your first officer is impressed. You remember when you were impressed by things like this. You're flying through weather that shuts down airports. You're dealing with de-icing, anti-icing, holding patterns, reroutes, fuel management. You're making decisions constantly. Do we have enough fuel to hold for 30 minutes, or do we need to divert now? Is this thunderstorm safe to penetrate, or do we deviate around it? Can we make this approach in this crosswind, or is it too dangerous? At level 5, you're also mentoring first officers. Some are experienced and competent. Some are brand new, barely out of training, nervous, making mistakes. You remember being them. You're patient. You teach them. You show them how to manage weather, how to handle ATC, how to fly smoothly. You make them better pilots. You're also dealing with the politics of seniority. You might be a junior captain flying narrow-body domestic routes, or you might be a senior captain flying wide-body international routes. The difference is huge, not just in pay, but in quality of life. Senior captains fly 12 to 14 days a month and make $400,000.
Junior captains fly 18 days a month and make $250,000. You bid every month for the best schedule you can hold. You're managing fatigue. You're flying red-eyes, overnight flights. You're landing at 6 a.m. after being awake for 20 hours. You're crossing time zones so often your body doesn't know what time it is. You're taking melatonin, drinking coffee at weird hours, trying to sleep in hotels during the day. It wears on you. But you're a captain. You've reached the top level of professional aviation. Kids come up to the cockpit and ask if they can see where you work. You let them sit in your seat, let them touch the controls, explain what all the buttons do. You remember being that kid. You smile. You encourage them to become pilots. Some of them will. Most won't. It's a hard path. You know better than anyone. You're flying a Boeing 777 from Los Angeles to Sydney, a 15-hour flight over the Pacific Ocean. You take off at sunset. You climb to 40,000 feet. You engage the autopilot. You cross the ocean in darkness. You watch the sun rise over the Pacific, painting the clouds gold and pink below you. Your first officer is asleep in the bunk. You're alone with your thoughts, alone with the plane, alone with the sky. This is level 5. You're not just a pilot anymore. You're a captain. You're in command. You've earned every hour, every rating, every stripe. You spent $100,000 in 10 years and thousands of hours to sit in this seat, and it was worth every single moment. These are the 5 levels of being an airline pilot, from student to instructor to regional first officer to major airline first officer to captain. Each level harder than the last, each level requiring more skill, more hours, more dedication, each level taking you closer to the left seat. Welcome to the 5 levels. And if you ever meet a level 5 captain, thank them. They've earned it.